and welcome to a special episode of Verge Magazine's alternative F1 podcast. Now, I say this is a special episode, but unfortunately in the world of today, it isn't special, it isn't limited, and it's not even a rare topic. It happens every day all around the world. Today we're going to be discussing the news from America and how it's impacted our lives and how it needs to continue impacting them on a daily basis. It's a raw topic and one that you may not want to listen to, but unfortunately for those who don't, it's a conversation that needs to be had. Racism is prevalent in our world, including the world of sport. We've seen it as fans, and some may have even felt it. But now more than ever, it's crucial we open the conversation up and point the finger at those who need pointing at. As someone with white privilege, it's important for me to stand up and speak out for my friends, my colleagues, and the people I consider my family. And because I'm fortunate to have the platform to do so. I've experienced racism from the sidelines, but I've never had to fear experiencing it firsthand. Something that my two co-hosts are more likely to experience. And that's something that angers me, but at the same time humbles me. This week, one driver stood alone in his protest of racism. In an industry of thousands of people, he stood alone. And the likelihood is he doesn't watch this show, but regardless of that fact, we want him to know that we stand with him and all Black lives in sport and around the world because they matter. Now, normally we're alternative, but today we're just going to be realistic. We've saved this episode until now because we're going to be looking back at how the news and the activism that's followed has been handled by the motorsport community. The good, the bad, and unfortunately, the ugly in all of its forms. Now, we, as of last week, had our first partner, and we've come together with them, and Matt's going to explain a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you so much, of course, for that very amazingly heartfelt statement. So, of course, it feels strange to kind of, talk about brand messaging at this stage of the episode, but of course, we are brought here by Natural Barber Company, our main podcast partners, of course, alongside with Verge Magazine. But we're really proud that, we are partnered with Natural Barber Company as they continue to support commitment and justice in America. They have been donating to the Minnesota Freedom Fund and continue to do so. So as partners felt like this would be the best, at this stage, the best we can at least do is to make sure that the percentage that what alternative sport makes from these sales of products through our gift code is also donated to the Minnesota Freedom Fund. And as of this moment, as of the time of the recording of this episode, the donations have been paused at this stage on the Minnesota Freedom Fund. So anything that we gather as far as profit, we will hold on to until we are able to donate to the Minnesota Freedom Fund. And if for any reason that we cannot do that and obligate that, we will seek to donate to a alternative charity that is connected in fighting this positive movement forward. So of course, as ever, you shop now, you get 20% off free next day delivery in the UK using the code ALTSPORT25, ALTSPORT25. So visit naturalbarber.co and, it's a little bit of what we can do. We want to continue supporting charities and all the activations that are making a positive change. And yeah, gents, what a week it's been. What a couple of days it's been. It's been very unique for us, hasn't it?
Yeah, I just want to just jump in and just say, to Sam, that was a very brave thing to do, and he's doing the right thing. I think that too many people, what they do is that they put their head in the sand and they say, well, I'm not that way, and I don't think of it that way. But what's important is being active and actually showing people from your group of friends, family, your platforms, that what you stand for and making people aware of the plight of others that aren't as fortunate to be able to just live freely and not have to think about where they're going to go on holiday. Okay, is there going to be, people reacting in a bad way to me going there? Going to the shops, having to think, okay, if I put my phone in my pocket, are they going to think I'm stealing something? All of these things that people of color, and obviously, at the moment, obviously, predominantly talking about Black people, but all people of color have to put up with these things. And I just want to thank you, Sam, for like taking the initiative yourself and, stepping forward and saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to step up and I'm going to talk to you guys and I'm going to say what it's like from my point of view. And there's many people like you in the racing world who haven't and won't do those things. So I just want to thank you in particular.
That's good, man. It's been a bit of a tough week for me, if I'm honest, because I've got people like you and I've got people like Matt, and I've got a lot of friends in America. And actually, I spent a month and a half in Minnesota, and it's one of my favorite cities in the world. And unfortunately, this has happened, not just this time, but it's happened before. And it's difficult because I have so many good memories there. And actually, I can't in good faith think of that city in a positive light until the injustice is solved. Like there's many amazing people in that city, but they're being overshadowed by 4 people, which is unfortunate, but it's a problem that needs to be fixed, and it's so deep rooted that it's going to take time. So it needs to be, and it needs people who are not part of, the targeted group to stand up, because they're just going to be muted otherwise, So yeah, it's been a difficult week for me and my friends, but I'm glad that I've got the platform and I've got friends like you guys who I can help support in any way I can and stand with you and make a stand, because even if this doesn't affect many people, if it affects 1 or 2, that's more than it did before without it. So that's the important thing.
I think what's been really significant about wanting to do this episode, and obviously thank you, Sam, because you, to be honest, were the first in our group to really suggest and mention this and pushing it forward. Of course, what we were hoping to do was, we'll touch on it later on, as we had a few interesting opportunities to make this episode for various reasons. And, it's been horrific. In history, it's been horrific. And I feel like it's important, even if this podcast ends up being 10% about sport, 5% about Formula One, we hold no apologies for anyone that's tuning in to want to hear a sports show. That this is a everybody and an everyday life serious issue needs to be addressed kind of show. And I could only understand a minute percentage of what the anger and the pain that people from George Floyd's family feel, the people of Minnesota, America, Black communities around the world, and the wider world. It's, of course, as ever, rest in peace, George Floyd. The man was murdered by people that should be protecting him. Leaders of his country haven't done enough, and that is exactly why you see the reaction of the world has had, because it isn't just him. It's been many Black people before that have been victims of police brutality, and it is always going to be wrong. And there has been far too many incidents in the build-up that has happened, from what has happened to Aubrey Ahmed to what happened in New York with the lady that was frightened of a black male telling her to put her dog on a leash. It's pathetic, it's inexcusable. And I'm grateful that we have each other to have this discussion. I'm grateful that we have white friends to discuss this with, brown friends, Asian friends, African-American friends, everyone. I think it's so important that it feels like it's a moment in time in history where we will be better educated for educating the next generation. You have to think of it as only almost a lifetime ago, not even that, where we had World War II. So the progression and the changes and the steps that we make as people moves quickly, but there's always a lot more to be done. And that will not end when there is justice for George Floyd. It continues across everything. It's equality for all sexes. It's equality for LGBTQ. It's equality for any person of any kind of alternative background. And that is so important, that once this is done, once there is justice, you continue with that fight and you take something with it. And this is it. It's great that we have seen passion and that action has been put into it. It's not like back in the day on Facebook when everyone was going crazy over, we must find Joseph Kony. Remember that movement on Facebook? And obviously nothing come of that. The guy who ran that motion ended up being found naked going crazy in the street. So it's great that social media has started to really make a difference. And it's so important. As I touched upon it, I wanted to address that, get off my chest, because I feel like people might tune into this episode, might skip through, but take our intro and our statement that we are against everything that we have seen. Of course, we understand the anger. But of course, we hold sympathy for people, local businesses that obviously feel the same feelings, have been affected, but we understand the anger. And I think that's very important, because I myself, from an Asian background, have experienced racism. While it may not be of the standard that we are seeing now, what's been recorded and presented to us by social media, but I can understand why people felt what they feel, what has happened, why they feel like they have to act against the police. It's understandable. And I feel like you see that in these moments where communities and people come together, and this is where people of high profile and people of audiences have come together. And I think that's been so important and inspiring, in the sense that we have seen people take charge. And I think, Andre, one thing that you were really attached to was Lewis Hamilton, because of course for you, as in general, has always been a kind of polarizing character for yourself, but something really changed when he stood up in front of the whole world and F1 community.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, Lewis Hamilton is the person that actually got me interested and following Formula One, and he, obviously shone a light on the sport. It was it was a gatekeeper, Sherpa to the sport, and he's always spoke up, and it's always been apparent that the lack of people of color in the actual sport, especially black people in particular. From what I've seen personally, there's only been him, his dad, his brother, and I think there's an engineer in Mercedes, and one in Red Bull. And the fact that I can kind of name that in my hand, and that's kind of it's a sign that the world in Formula One has to actually look at things in a different way, become a bit more inclusive. And to be fair, I'll just make this clear that the organization, the marketing team, communication team, Formula One have always been welcoming, and they're the people that actually given us a lot of the access that we have, and not just because I'm black or not because Matt is of color, and not because of because we're ticking a box, because we actually provide good, if not great, content. So we're there on merit, not because we're ticking a box. But I want to thank them in particular, Claire, Ellie, Liam, Helen in particular, like from F1 for always making the effort to be able to reach out to us, to be able to give us opportunities that others haven't ever done. And it's only recently changed with Liberty taking over. What I personally was disappointed with is that Lewis, like me, I was looking on when he made the statement, because obviously I know he would, because that's the type of person he is. Made a statement, and we waited for ages for any of the other teams or drivers to be able to get involved in any form of way. And then obviously he made another statement, and then because he came at everyone, just like say, I can effectively, obviously you can look at Lewis Hamilton's tweets, or we'll try to put it on the screen for those who are watching. He actually, effectively ended it by saying, look, I know who you are, and I know who's not saying stuff, and I'll remember that effectively. And then all of a sudden you start to see people, joining in. Even his team was late to the party, being honest, but they're one of the two teams that I've seen at this time of recording, getting involved in putting in a message out that racism is not acceptable. That it is a lame way of thinking. But what I was disappointed about, being honest, is the reception of the fans, like the comments underneath. So when people were doing something, so Lando, for example, put out straight away, Black Lives Matter, blacked out his screen, and he's been very supportive. And then automatically underneath that, I see All Lives Matter. all of those things, and people being very dismissive. I'll stick to sports. If you're listening and that's your attitude, then honestly, you're not welcome. I'm just being honest. Like, it's not something that it's not something that's needed. If you don't understand or care about the plight of others, then, you know, to be honest with you, I think you're a sad, small, pitiful individual. I think if you are not liking Lewis Hamilton speaking about his personal experiences of being a black man, the only black person in the sport, and this is not a normal thing. You know, you got him, probably Tiger Woods, who are the only black people in their sport. And I won't get into Tiger Woods, but I just think that why is there not, why is the, you know, and there was a lot of support from fans saying thank you for putting these messages out. You know, some of the other drivers who did it, you guys will list them after. But I just feel that I was disappointed with a lot of the backlash from these fans saying all lives matter. I'll get on with it. Oh, we don't care for sports. And even like probably the other biggest platform, and I'll say it as it is, the other biggest platform that we have for social media on racing, they've done nothing. They've not mentioned one thing. It's like it hasn't even happened. Like, they're just ignoring it. That is part of the problem. They are part of the problem. And anyone who wants to bury their sand is part of the problem. And anyone who wants to be dismissive is part of the problem.
For me, I think for years we have spoken about how F1 is an elite sport and it takes money to get involved. And we've championed drivers like Esteban Ocon, whose parents gave up everything for him to drive. You know, they gave up his money, all that kind of stuff, for him to be able to race in Formula One. And I'm not going to take that amazing achievement away from him and his family, because he's done incredible. But we've always seen the biggest barrier to Formula One being money. Actually, I don't believe it is, because we've still got more than 3 drivers on the current grid who came from not so rich backgrounds, right? But we still only have 1 driver of colour. So actually, I think the biggest blocker and barrier to getting into the sport is purely, and it is down to this, is the amount of pigmentation in your skin. Because, Dre, if we were as good on a track as each other, if we were doing the exact same lap times, I will be picked because of the optics. I'm a white driver, I'm British, right? The likelihood is I will get picked ahead of you, or even if you were better than me, the likelihood is I would still get picked. And that's the sad thing. And it's not just Lewis that's seen this, because back in 2008, when he won his world championship, the start of that season, the testing in Barcelona, there was racism directed towards him, pure, like literally as unhidden and unmasked as you could find. They opened a website called Pop Lewis's Tires, and they encouraged people to drop pins on this virtual grid and kind of trying to pop Lewis's tires so he doesn't win the world championship, right? And the other thing about that is that year, there was a racism initiative started by Formula One, and that was 12 years ago. We still only have 1 driver of colour on the grid. So,
I mean, there's obviously Alex Albon as well. And
yes,
yeah.
You know what I mean? As in, from like Alex has made a statement, and I like Alex's statement because he was very open and honest about kind of his position and how he felt about it. And looking at some of the comments on his post, they're really supportive. Of course, as we've seen, there is some comments on there, the All Lives Matter issue, that you put it pretty plain and simply, like, it's not okay.
Yeah, I'd like to read out the statement, and I don't want to address it. Of course, we haven't read out Lewis's statement. Don't read into that like it's something, but I really recommend it, especially with Lewis's statement. Read for yourself, because I think it's really important to understand his feeling as a leader in sport. But just to quickly go through Alex's statement, because I think what is really important about this, as you're touching on, Sam, is someone that is aware of his difference and his privilege. And I think this is very important to highlight, because this will help others understand. People that are watching us and experiencing this, I know you aren't, not all of you, and if you are wealthy, then that's amazing, but you aren't from rich families that one day you might become a racing driver. But just to touch on Alex Albon's statement. Truthfully, and this was posted on his Instagram, which as of this episode, when it gets released, should be 6 days ago. But to quote Alex, truthfully, I've been quite hesitant having a voice around George Floyd's death because I felt I wasn't in a position to talk. I grew up in a very privileged way, shielded away from any form of racism, whether it was at school, in my neighborhood, or racing. I never experienced it, and so I don't really know how to put into words. But I came to realize that that was part of the problem. Staying silent wasn't good enough. Everyone should be able to experience how I grow up. With that being said, it's never too late to change and address what's wrong. This is about injustice and to stand up for racial equality. What happened to George Floyd is inexcusable. It's a final straw for many, and so it's our duty to reform and to create a better world for all of us. So how can we help? One way is being vocal and spreading awareness. We can also donate, and which he has put a link in below. But more than anything, don't tolerate any form of racism, whether it be at your home, with your parents, at school, with your friends, or with your work colleagues. And then he says, on a side note, you guys probably know I am not the most active in social media. In fact, I try to stay away from it most of the time, but if there's one thing I've seen, is how this topic has created conflict and separation between our community. Let's keep the love people. So amazing statement. I think that kind of touches on what you're talking about here, Sam. It's the people from the other side being aware and taking action.
Yeah, it's basically Alex going out saying, all right, I admit it. I'm from a privileged background, so I haven't experienced it, but that doesn't mean I don't see it. And I think that's the important thing. Just because you haven't experienced it and it doesn't affect you and it doesn't affect your life, it doesn't mean you can't get involved and stand up for other people. Like, I've never experienced racism directly because in blunt terms, I'm white. That's the way it is. Gray, you, Matt, you have. I don't know what that feels like, but it's my duty to stand on the side and be like, okay, that's still not right just because I haven't experienced it. And that's what I like about Alex's statement, is because he's admitting to that, and he's admitting that he may not get it right 100% of the time, but he's still going to get the balls to go and do it.
Andre, how important do you find it that, these races, or, with F1 we have a grid from different backgrounds, but it's just how important is it that they address their audiences and, address people from their countries?
Yeah, I mean, it's massively important. At the end of the day, it's opening the minds of other people. It's spreading the message. It's making people aware that, hey, you know what? Like, there are other people that are suffering, that have to fight for the privileges that you take for granted. If you're not doing anything, and I'll call out another person. I'll call out another organisation as well. Sky F1. I watched them this week, and I really enjoyed a lot of their coverage. And they skirted past it at the end of one of the podcast episodes that they have. Just didn't really mention it. Just said, "Oh, Lewis said something," and just kind of like the last 2 minutes, just kind of skirted past it. When it actually should be something that they should be, making more people aware of. And the more of us are doing things like this, then it drowns out the noise of the idiots that are the all lives matter. I'll get on with it. I'll get on with the racing. We just don't want to deal with that. Stop being political. People are not doing it to be political. Lewis is not doing it to be political. Lewis is talking and using his platform to be able to spread awareness. So because he has to deal with this stuff, it's his life. It's not politics. It's human. It's being human. It's being a decent member of the world, and understanding that, like, people who have got the same talent shouldn't be separated. Like, if, as I said, Sam mentioned, if we was driving, then he would be at pick before me because he's white. Why? That shouldn't happen. And I can't believe in 2020 we're having the same conversation. So that's why platforms like us, the platform we have here at Alternative Sport, Verge Magazine, Alternative F1, we have these platforms because we want to increase the amount of positivity towards inclusivity. I don't know really what else to say. If I could talk slower for those who are not intelligent enough to be able to grasp the concept that, you know, other people should be welcomed in this Formula One society, the community. Because if you don't start getting younger people from different backgrounds who are not looking exactly like you, because I have to dumb it down for these people, then the sport will die. F1 has to compete against all other sports. And if all the other sports are being inclusive and have people who are role models to all kids, and there's not as much racism, because there's racism everywhere, but if there's not as much racism, there's more inclusivity, then people will go towards that sport. If you truly do love Formula One, you know, and there's a lot of people that only watch Formula One. If you love it and you want it to continue forever, you better start thinking differently, because otherwise from that, because crowds won't start going elsewhere, sponsors won't be coming in to the sport, and then the sport will die.
There's actually, going back to the comments that we both said, actually, Dre, about how we've seen people say all lives matter. Like, for those that don't understand the problem with that saying,
you've got to speak slower to them.
Yeah, so the word all is a word that encompasses everything, right? So if you say all lives matter, that means every life on this planet matters. You can't use that saying when Black people are being systematically targeted by police, by racists across the world. You can't use all lives matter until Black lives matter the same amount as white lives. So don't see Black Lives Matter as an offensive kind of, you know, people calling out that Black lives are more important than white lives. They're not. At the moment,
not anti-white, it's anti-racism. That's the point of the movement.
At the moment,
but I'll just say this, guys. Like, honestly, they know. Any person who puts it, like, I understand at the start of the movement, maybe people didn't really understand, so therefore there was just like, wait a minute, I was thinking everyone matters. I understand that. But right now, 2020, this is several years on from the Black Lives Matter movement, from in a different sport, Colin Kaepernick taking a knee in NFL and all these things, and Donald Trump making it about the flag and making it basically politicizing and making it a racial thing more than actually is a movement about, you know, the equality for others. If these people, I don't believe that they don't know. I think you do know what you're doing. I don't think you're welcome to a majority of normal, loving people, you know, who function in a society with loads of different people. I can't give them like a pass to say that they don't know. We've got to stop explaining it to these people. We've got to start blocking these people. We've got to start ignoring them, drowning these people out. Because I'll just make it clear on this, when you're putting all lives matter on purpose, what you're doing is you're just being dismissive of the plight of other people. And you're doing it on purpose. You see what you're doing. You're not clever. You're quite thick. So therefore, like, you know, and again, if you're listening to this and that's the way you think, please feel free to move on. There's another platform that you can go to that literally would only talk about racing, that has not talked about the social issues that other people, that the champion of the sport, the person that's going to beat, which they're not going to like, Michael Schumacher's record, you know, they don't talk about it. We will.
I think what's so important with, you know, hearing these teams and hearing these racers reach out, it addresses the education and the start to allow people to, you know, refocus and re-understand and reprocess what this all means. I think it's so important that we have all these racers that, you know, are stepping out, because you've seen it in other sports where NFL, we could talk about Drew Brees, for example, and he has completely stepped out in the wrong way. It's happened in the WWE. There's a wrestler called Jackson Riker who also basically supported Trump's heavy-handed action. For a man that can step in front of a church that was only partially burnt, to have a president like Donald Trump that stands in front of them with a Bible without even reading a passage. I'm not a religious man. I'm not even a religious man. But that pisses me off, and I can't even imagine what people, religious communities, feel about that. So that's where sport role models, and it's not only sport, but this is a sports show, have done their part to step up. And it takes the people that represent the sport to make people aware, because sure, there might be people in communities that don't get to experience day-to-day contact with people of Asian or Black or whatever background that diversifies us. But the majority of us have the access to the internet, and we have to use our words carefully and properly. Of course, people try to help, and like we've said, people might have the intentions of saying something positive and really take a wrong angle. And that was something that one of the purposes we wanted to start this episode was we wanted to reach out to Will Buxton, who basically quoted the very first statement of Lewis Hamilton, and by saying along the lines of, open your eyes, we see everything, feel everything, don't cast us out. To say that is moronic. For someone that is even considered in some degree a notable figure within the F1 community, you messed up. And there's a time and a place when you say the wrong words that you have to accept your mistake, take an L, shut your mouth, refocus your mindset, and repair and educate. That's the very least you can do. And we wanted to have Will on here, and it's whether we are big enough at this stage to have people like that to approach stuff. We just wanted to address it head on, and at least we could spearhead trying to heal this community, especially in F1. If we can do our bit within F1, it's a part of the puzzle that makes it better globally. And of course, we understand there might be a lot of political things behind the scenes, and a lot of people from his side of the team obviously suggest to keep silent, or to, there's all kinds of things behind the scenes we don't know and may not understand. So we don't hold against Will for not being able to read our messages of us reaching out. It just is what it is. But for us to address it, someone or anyone in F1 who has a significant importance to the sport should not end up becoming divisive. And I think that was what was really kind of hurtful to see someone like that do. And this is across all sports. It's not just a Will Buxton, it's not a Drew Brees. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in journalists in America. I forget the lady's name, and I don't really care that I don't remember her name because she doesn't deserve to be named. There was a lady that told one news, I think it was Fox News, of course, surprise, and said in a story about LeBron James, when he was talking about racism and the flag and taking it, whatever it may be, that he should just shut up and dribble. But when Drew Brees said something about the flag, he has a right to an opinion. And that is just a really glowing example of what an absolute mess this is, and why we have no fear to step out and say, this is how we feel. This is our part of, as people, it's about being people first. And as people, we can say that this is wrong and this is not right. And I'm sure there are a lot of people with good intentions. I'm sure Will Buxton wants to be a supporter and is a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. But when, people are very angry at social media, and that's not to his fault, it's not to anyone's fault. It's a collective feel. But he kind of, for me, as I described to you guys, it's almost like the kid at school who gets in trouble, gets told off by a teacher and doesn't shut up, and then turning it into a little pity party. We understand. Look, you take great pride in your work, and that's great. And I think you are very important to what F1 is on a broadcasting sense. Don't ever tell someone to open their eyes. Don't ever play the victim and say, don't cast us out. Don't sit there and complain that social media is a trip. What you feel, your pain or hurt, or any bruised ego you receive from having a negative reaction because of how you try to approach this matter, is nothing compared to what the emotions of anyone of Black origin are feeling right now. That's why it's been very important to see races like Lewis Hamilton step out. It's important to see drivers eventually have a comment. And I felt it was very revealing that as of UK time, it was almost like 5-6 o'clock till we saw anything from other teams. And I find that troubling. Why are we not scared to straight away say our part? Straight away. We shouldn't be beyond comms. And if you're a social media manager running your accounts, you should be the first to say, I'm going to post this. And if you're head of the HR teams, you should be the first to say, do this immediately. If it makes a small difference, a massive difference, or no difference, try to make a difference. And that's what's really important about what we try to do as a podcast, what Formula One should do, what us as people should do, what sport, what entertainment. Anyone has a platform to, to put out there. It's so important. And one thing I would really wanted to touch upon is, and we, of course, haven't been able to vet every single team's social media statements, press, Twitter, Instagram stories, but I'm massively disappointed. I think all of us here within Alt Sport, Verge Magazine, and but me personally, I don't want to speak for everyone else. To not see teams like Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, and Red Bull post. Now, I reserve my statement if they have posted on Instagram stories and I have not seen it. But as far as what I'm seeing on a thread, if 3 teams have not posted on their feed a statement or a support, or even a black square, whether you think that is, the totality of what it needs to be, but the fact that we have not seen those 3 teams post on their feeds or Twitter, like, sure, you could take like a Carlos Sainz, who's going to be joining Ferrari. He has actually tweeted, and I believe I may have seen on Instagram stories, but at least on Twitter, the future Ferrari driver has commented. Charles Leclerc has commented. I find it very troubling, like a powerhouse, especially like Ferrari. No, I'm not going to single them out, because Alfa Romeo and Red Bull, you should step up and you should be doing something about that. It's never too late, and you should be doing more. And I'm sure behind the scenes, and I hope behind the scenes, something is done. But something like Ferrari, the hugest name on that list, Italian. And I'm not afraid to say Italy does have also a very big problem race. Football is a diverse sport and has had many of issue with racism. And it has happened for far too long. I mean, poorly addressed. And it goes down to all the governing bodies of football that have failed to address it properly. And that also is where it goes wrong. So if Ferrari can't be in a position to say to their audience globally, also to people of Italy, that this is wrong, how is that going to change any thought or perspective on their audience to go, maybe this is wrong? That is not going to move anything in a positive step forward. Now, sure, you could listen to it and say, well, they don't have to. They don't need to. They're just a sport. This is an Instagram page for a team. No, it doesn't matter, because everyone of every background and every diversity is saying something and doing something. You have to understand. That's why Alex Albon's statement is very important as a British Asian. Being aware and educating. And that's why I think Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, and Red Bull have completely missed the mark.
Yeah, shout out to Mercedes F1, definitely McLaren as well, who stepped up really quickly. Obviously, people never know what to say, and I think that's what I'll probably leave on is I would say that it's not about you not knowing what to say and being worried about don't worry about the backlash, and don't worry about what these morons are going to say to you. Obviously, you don't want them in your lives anyway, and obviously you have to educate people that may need enlightening. Maybe they need someone to be able to kind of shine a light on something that they wasn't aware of. So I'm not going to say any person who hasn't posted, obviously all 3 of us would say that doesn't mean you're racist, but what we'd like is a show of more inclusivity, because then it changes the minds of others, and then also it makes the sport more accessible to all, and that's what we all want. Sam, I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, I think Matt, you said it earlier about people in social media teams and HR teams and marketing teams taking the initiative. From someone who works in the communication industry, purely from a fan's perspective, you have fans all around the world. Some of those people will be Black, some of those people will be Asian, some of those people will be Mexican or Latino, or different ethnic minorities and backgrounds. It's waiting is not the right thing to do. Waiting for approval from the senior team to make sure you're not exposing yourself to any negative criticism. There is ways. Like if you're scared about making the wrong statement, there is ways around it. You don't have to make a statement about how your brand feels or what your brand is going to do immediately. You don't have to do that. You have to, as soon as the protests and everything started happening in America, these teams could have just come out and said, we acknowledge what's going on in the world, and moving forward, we'll be doing something about it. We'll be posting more about that later on. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to come out with a 4 or 5 paragraph statement immediately. And I think that's the thing that Lewis called out, was that this has been going on for like 5 days until Lewis waited, and 5 days after the protest had started, I think it was 5 days, Lewis basically said, time has passed, and no one said nothing. That's what angered Lewis, right? It was the fact that it's now taken for him to stand up for people to take notice. And I don't want to fault any of the drivers and the teams for actually making a statement, because it's important that they did. But if you look at the optics of it, what it's taken is one person to call them out, and then they went, oh shit, we got to get something out. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think that's right. And I think, personally, if it was me, the statement would have been made quite open, quite short, but just an acknowledgement that we feel what's been going on, we're aware of it, and we're not ignoring it. Then if you're going to do something, either whether it's make a donation or, provide support for your employees, like, that's okay. You can post that later. It's the acknowledgement that needed to be done. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, is that as an industry and as a sport, it was a bit slow. Do you know what I mean? That's for me is, so like, yeah, I think that for me is where F1, the teams, the sport, the community, the fans need to get better. That's how I see the sport progressing. But Dre, from your perspective, who's someone who got into the sport by watching Lewis Hamilton, someone who talks about this matter from a personal experience, how do you think the sport can move forward? Because I can't talk from authority. I can talk from my perspective.
Yeah,
I'm not someone that feels it. How do you think we move on? How do we get past it?
I mean, I'll be honest. I think that I'm just being careful with this one, but I think that from my personal interactions with the world of Formula One since Liberty has taken over, and as I said, I mentioned, the comms team for F1, they've been amazing. I think that they're already making those steps to be more inclusive, to have people at the top. I mean, we went to a media event, and we sat down there with Ross Brawn, and we was talking about the season. This is obviously before the season started last year. We spoke about what's going to happen with the season and people to look out for, and then obviously I'm in my own sports head, so I don't wasn't thinking as a black person all the time, until I looked around the table and then I realized that I was the only black person there. And I think that I'm just going to give Liberty, F1 credit where it's due. They're actually already making steps by talking with us and being inclusive and getting us to go to races, getting us access to be able to speak to racers, getting us to go to the esports stuff. Like, all of these things that these guys are doing is absolutely amazing. What I would say is that it's more of the teams that I'm not going to include McLaren in that, because McLaren have been brilliant, absolutely amazing about inclusive, reaching out to us and having conversations, and and as of Mercedes as well. But I think there's more to work to go from the teams for them to be able to show their fans the way to behave, their fans the way to be able to think moving forward. I think that I'm being honest, like, because my expectations is quite low. The fact that people was like, oh shit, I better tweet too. That's an improvement from where it was a few years ago. So things are moving forward. I think we can move things forward. I think we should challenge all of sports fans in general, and especially Formula One fans. Challenge those who come out with nonsensical, racist, or ignorant or dismissive gibberish. You know, you have to, and these conversations are not always going to be online because not everyone's on there. But if someone says something ignorant, challenge it. It makes the sport and the world a better place. And Matt, what's your take on that?
Completely echo what you said. I think as we come to a close, it's just, I'm grateful that we've had this episode to discuss it. And I do hope that others in Formula One podcast community, the YouTube community, take a chance to address their communities. We're only a growing platform, but I think it's been so important, and that we feel that, being, under our ethos of being alternative is to be honest, but open and brave and bold. It's about educating. Everything going forward is about educating, helping people understand when they doubt, or even doubt that what they're doing is making a change. I have no idea if people will listen to us and listen to the really important thoughts of you gents, and especially of Andre's take on things. So do not doubt yourself for a second that when you share these opinions, challenge each other to address how we become better. And it will not end today, and it should not end ever. Black lives always matters. And that is as simple as that. And the fact that we're having to say it is painful, in the sense that it should have always mattered. It is outstandingly shocking that in 2020 we need to address this. We have to address this. But it's shocking that how far we have all come as humans to be in this position right now. It's somber, and I think, like, up to this point, if anyone has continued to listen, thank you, because it is important. It doesn't matter if myself as a British Asian, as Sam as a white person, we are not, sadly, quote, the victims in this, but we are aware of what's going on. And I think that's so important that we notice what's going on, and we assess and reconstruct how we can use our communities, our platforms, to build positive change. And that's why it's been so important to see all these F1 races step up. It's important that the teams that have stepped up, and all sports to step up. It's important that leaders of countries, mayors, governors, politicians, MPs, not just UK, not just America, but the world, step up. It's important that they step up, treat women with fair equality and respect, treat the LGBTQ community with respect, and anyone that is in the firing line of discrimination, step up, grow up, respect each other, love each other. We need each other. The fact that there are people across the world that feel the need to be racist, and especially in America, I find it so disappointing when some of the greatest musicians, entertainers, sports stars are Black. The land of the free, and I hate to make this like it's a country thing, but as a powerful economic nation, the world is watching. And when you have a president that makes it about the flag, makes it about the Bible, makes it about the church, and doesn't make the spearhead the issue, and then doesn't have the brave conversations like we are at least trying to have. These are all building blocks of the problem. Social media has been so powerful and healing and educating, while there has been a lot of negative in social media as well. We cannot ignore that is a thing. But if everyone does a little piece of work in addressing, having the conversations, or make things better. And as my final light note, if you were to go onto Twitter and type in racist, and then go to people, the very first name on that list that appears is Donald Trump. So a little bit light entertainment, just to to spin on that. But I think that sums up
They're
my
not
feelings.
gonna like you saying that.
It's just truth. It's just truth. It's what's there, and that's what's there to be seen.
I'm gonna just finally just to say, look, all of the platforms that are reporting on Formula One, do better. To be honest, I haven't seen anything. I'm not pointing at anyone in particular. We've got a lot of friends within the social media F1 community, but just do better. The biggest platform, I'm not going to name them, but the biggest platform for Formula One at the moment, nothing, absolutely nothing. I think that is part of the problem. Ignoring it and just being we're gonna get some pushback from some of these fans, or we might lose followers. So what? What's more important? The inclusivity and the uprising of the sport, and making sure that the sport is surrounded by love and new talent and more excitement and different fans who are going to bring different things in? Or do we just keep it middle class, over 40 and white? That's not the way that we want to do things, and we're not going to do those things, and that's not the way that F1, I can tell you that for sure. Formula One do not want to do that, and they are a very inclusive outfit. We're going to go back to doing what we do, which is giving you the best coverage of this sport and most inclusive coverage of this sport, and also including women, other people from different backgrounds in this, who are fans of this sport, as we've been doing. We're carrying doing our job by being inclusive. Can you do yours? Matt and Sam, appreciate you guys, honestly, coming along on this journey on this particular episode. We'll go back to doing what we do, that we do very well. And thank you for those who are keeping following us and following us on our Instagram and Twitter pages, so forth. We appreciate everything that you guys are doing and supporting us, and we'll keep on doing what we do for you guys. Peace.